Beelzebub, a character that never actually existed. We first find Beelzebub in Jewish literature in the Book of Kings, and it's not actually an individual identity, but a slur against the ruler of a mountain named Zebul. And that ruler was called Lord, and Lord is the word Baal, Baal, B-A-A-L, and Zebul is Z-E-B-U-L. So Beelzebul, the Lord of the lofty and high place, became the Lord of Flies when they changed one little letter, the B at the end. They made it a B, and that turned it into Lord of the Flies. And they did that to mock him because I guess he was one of the Canaanite kings on the visiting team of the story of Kings, and they were disrespecting him by changing that last letter on his name. And that's all that word ever had any credibility for meaning until Rome came along and created this giant obfuscation called Beelzebub in Mark chapter 3, verse 22, and it's also in at least one other synoptic gospel that covers the exact same scenario where Jesus is he's exorcising demons in front of a crowd out of a person. And the Jewish elders come down the hill and they address the crowd and Jesus and say, this is the prince of demons if he has the authority to cast out his own. And they call him Beelzebub, right? Which is effing ridiculous because Jewish elders wouldn't have had any precedent in any of their demonological history to refer to anyone named Beelzebub unless they didn't understand their own Book of Kings and the fact that it was just a funny slur. And it was never meant to be a demon, let alone the prince of demons. So what is Rome doing here when they create this story where the Jewish elders would accuse Jesus of being Prince Beelzebub? What they're doing here is they're trying desperately not to make the connection between the actual prince of demons in Jewish literature and the Dead Sea Scrolls, the one who's mentioned 52 or 53 times in all of Jewish literature. That's a lot. It's so much, in fact, that there's no other demon in all of Jewish history that is mentioned more often, that's more prolific than Belial. 26 times in the Old Testament, once by Paul in Corinthians 6:15, 2 Corinthians 6:15, and then so that's 27 times in the Bible, and then 26 times in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the prince of demons, Belial, is mentioned. He is the fisher of men, and he fishes with 3 specific nets. One is submission to government, the other is submission to the monetary system, and the third is bad dietary advice. Man, he checks all those boxes really effectively, doesn't he? And the fisher of men has been getting away with capturing the believer and the unbeliever alike for 2,000 years now under the Roman monetary system. And so what they could not allow was for the Jewish educated elders to come down the hill and accuse Jesus of being the prince of demons, Belial, because if they did that, then that would be an obvious connection, way more obvious than even what Paul did with his invention of Christ as a costume over Belial in 2 Corinthians 6:15. But they had to obfuscate it. They had to make it seem like the Jewish elders were making a solid accusation, but they blew it with the name Beelzebub. And so once you understand all of this, you know that that was an impossibility. They would never have used that name. It also proves that it was Rome that were the authors of the story, right? Because the Jews wouldn't have made that mistake if they were writing it. So what's the big deal about not mentioning Belial if he was the prince? Because Christ is Belial, and they couldn't be that obvious. So 2 big things that I wanted you to take away from this. Beelzebub never existed. There's no way that they would have referred to him as a real demon. But the thing that they're covering up behind that is not a shallow thing at all. It's perhaps one of the most important demonological discoveries in history, that Christology itself is a new form of demonology.